If you're watching this video, I assume you're interested in Curseborn. Curseborn is an RPG, urban horror by Onyx Path Publishing. It is currently backing right now on Kickstarter. It is not out, but it will be out probably physically in like over a year, maybe a year and a half or so. They don't set solid release dates, but just know that if you back the project right now, you're going to get a rough draft copy of the rules. Right now, they're putting them out at a few days base. Every few days, they're putting out a new preview of each chapter. So check them out. I think they're right now up to the dead section, which I'll go into in a little bit once we start answering questions. So the first question up is, who is born and why are they cursed? I'm assuming this is asking why the title of Curseborn is called Curseborn. If you break it down, you have curse at the beginning, and then you have born with an E at the end. Born with an E at the end is, etymology-wise, means you are bearing or carrying a curse. In the game, you play as the Accursed, who are characters who are affected by powerful familial curses that give them superpowers, essentially, or not really superpowers, but magical abilities and things of that nature. Now, you have the primals, who are your shapeshifters. They can transform into werewolves or even inhuman monsters if they're the hides. There are a variety of them, from spiders, lizards, any other animal, pretty much. They have to contend with the curse of having a creature inside of them that sort of wants them to start to hunt and attack people. Then you have the sorcerers, who are magic-based. They look like normal people, but they are addicted to casting magic. And when they cast magic, they have to sacrifice things in order to fuel their spells. And if they don't, they'll go into sort of this rampage of casting magic and not worrying what they're sacrificing. And it can be many different things. It can be people, memories. It can even be time and things of that nature. Then you have the hungry, who are vampires. Essentially, they can feed on blood, but a lot of the different families feed on different stuff as well. You have things like memories, souls, even stuff that's kind of weird, like emotions and ghosts. Then their whole thing is once they've gone down and invoked one of their damnations, I believe they can only feed by they sort of go on a ravenous hunger spree, I feel. I'm not 100% sure about that because I only remember from the Ash Can, so correct me if I'm wrong on that. You also have the dead, who are people who have died and are possessing their corpse. And if their corpse has been destroyed, they're possessing other people's corpses as well in order to sort of stave off becoming a ghost forever. Ghosts in this game are called phantasms, and they are a lot less sentient than your dead are. They like to experience strong emotions and will sort of create it by scaring people or doing any number of things that makes them feel better, essentially. Feel more alive. You have the outcasts, who are exiled beings from other worlds called the outside. The outside is sort of like this general term for anything that's not Earth. So you can have a variety of them. Mostly they are angel or demon-like creatures, and they are inhuman, but they can pretend to look human with their supernatural abilities. But in order to feel connected to humanity, they need to make bonds with people, like friendships or deals with them. And that is something that's a bit interesting about them. I want to know more about how that works later on, but we haven't seen the preview yet of their lineage stuff yet, except for the Ash Can, but that might have changed. I don't know. What do your characters do? What is the gameplay loop? Your characters are similar to normal people. They have their normal lives, but because they're cursed, supernatural stuff happens around them, and they have to react to it or try and do something about it. That's sort of a general overview. Most of the time, your GM and your players are going to come up with what they want to do. For instance, there's a lot of family drama in Curseborn, and it covers a lot of found family tropes. And you can even see the themes that they want to invoke with the game in the first introductory chapter. For me, when I'm playing this game, I'm going to have my players have to deal with stuff like obligations to family members in their supernatural family, such as, oh, we need you to get this piece of territory back from the primals because we had it for such a long time, and they don't know how to deal with the supernatural effects of that place, but we can benefit from it a lot more than, say, the primals could, or something of that nature. There are 3 systems in the game. There's combat, social, and then investigation. The social is called intrigue, but basically you have the 3 standard pillars of a role-playing game there, with investigation being your exploratory type pillar. What do the PCs do by default? Again, your character is going to have sort of behave like a normal character in any sort of urban fantasy or urban horror game or book or media. If you want to get some inspiration, you can always read like the Dresden Files or something. I consider a lot of it being more investigation or horror focused, in my opinion, but really it's up to the GM to decide that for the group, or like decide that with the group. For me, what drives the campaign mostly is just trying to survive. But hopefully, like, when you look into the game and read the book, you can see like there are plenty of plot hooks probably that'll inspire you in what you want to do with the game. Honestly, like, if I were to look at Vampire the Masquerade, I don't know what the gameplay loop of that other than it feed off of humans in order to survive and deal with the courtly politics that happen. In which case, if I were to say the same thing with Curseborn, it is use your damnation or resolve your damnation to gain curse dice, depending on what type of character you are, and then deal with the family drama that's going on around you. We have additionally, what are the social structures the supernatural of Curseborn have formed, and how can the players interact with them as a group? There are a variety of them. I don't know if there are like factions in the same way that you might have factions in, say, like Dungeons and Dragons with like the Harper's Guild or whatever. But you have the different families. You have the lineages, which have families underneath them, such as like the Hydes, the Get of Lyca, the House of Bathory, and things of that nature, which are like your werewolves and vampires and things of that nature. As far as the players interacting with them, you have your family obligations because you're part of a particular family and within a particular lineage. But then you also have stuff like maybe you have friendships with other people in other families, and then you have to deal with the fact that maybe one family hates the other family, and you have to try and broker an alliance between them, or you need to keep things secret. Or maybe you're a character who doesn't want to be a part of your family, but is sort of like out on the outskirts, like the black sheep of the family. I really like the family aspect of it, because you can use a lot of terms with that to denote certain things, like saying black sheep of the family to denote someone who isn't supported by the rest of the family. What is the life of the average mortal in Curseborn? Curses affect everyone, not just Accursed. That normal people will be affected by curses in their daily life, such as like picking up a penny and you get good luck, and stuff like that, or crossing a black cat's path. It's just people aren't as aware that this is actually doing stuff to them. They might be aware on it in a superstitious sense, but they might not be like scientifically aware of it. It's not something you can scientifically prove that you have worse luck or something because of something you did, but it is something that you might feel in the back of your mind. So think of it like the normal real world stuff, but there's a lot more weight on, oh, bad luck can happen to me at any time. What are the antagonists? There are plenty of antagonists. We've had adversary chapters previewed on the Curseborn blog. Stuff like you have other families that you can go up against, other accursed. There are, I believe, like, again, I said like black sheep of the family. Maybe you go up against the black sheep of an accursed family. You have phantasms, who are ghosts or spirits or any sort of like incorporeal being that's in the world. You have the outsiders, who are from people from the outside. They are angels and demons or other creatures from different realms that are not Earth. And you can play around with that a lot, I assume. Like, you could throw in a Alice in Wonderland type world, and you have to deal with card people or something like that, which could be interesting if you want to play with those tropes. Additionally, we've seen zombies. We've seen things called shattered spaces, which are sort of like haunted locations that want to kill people and feed on them. Additionally, there are hunter type characters called venerators and like little Red Riding Hoods or Red Riding Hoods, which are people who have killed a curse and are able to use their body parts or trophies they've gotten from a curse in order to power their own magical abilities. So there's a lot that is going on there. I assume you can also create stuff that's sort of creepypasta influence, because that's one of the themes that they want to have Curseborn have, which is it's very much more modern day horror or creepypasta based horror. How do the curses work for each splat? Like the sorcerers have to cast magic, I'd love a too long didn't read version of how they pay / sacrifice in order to keep their proverbial fire lit without burning down the house. So the damnations all work differently across the lineages. I'm not sure if they work differently across the families. I don't think so. But in particular for the sorcerers, as far as we know, based on the descriptions Danielle has given us in the Pathcast and in sort of like other previews we've had, it seems like what sorcerers will do is they'll do like a one scene ritual or something like that in order to sacrifice something. It has to be something significant, so I'm assuming that it has to have some sort of time significance to it. And then if that's significant enough, you're going to regain your curse die. But if you don't have any curse die, you're going to be casting magic and you're going to be sacrificing stuff without knowing it. So you might forget some beloved childhood memories because you're sacrificing stuff without realizing it. If you're hungry and you're down at your last curse die and you've used it up and you hit your damnation, you might have to feed on someone, so you just target the nearest person and start draining them of blood. If you're dead, you need to cause emotional like passion in someone else, heightened emotions rather in someone else. So something that they might do is they might want to feed off of fear. So what they do is they start attacking their friends or doing creepy stuff around them without really having control of it in order to get some sort of feeling of emotion. Then you have the primals, who are the creatures, so they might just want to attack someone, so they'll attack the nearest thing. The creature is sort of like a ravenous beast, so I assume it's under story guide control. And then the outcasts, when they hit their curse, they show their inhuman form to people and they lose their connections to humanity because of that, because they start feeling like a monster again. And they need to reconnect to people, so they'll try and their face will reform back to their human form, and they'll need to create more human bonds with people or bonds with humans in order to like sort of feel like they are a person again. And that allows them to regain their curse die. Curse die are a mechanic that is used to power spells and other abilities, just as an FYI. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that because from what we know from one of the blog posts, the mechanics of it might have changed a little bit, so I don't know what it is exactly right now. Do we have any hints of whispered or mysteries beyond the Fae? What do the families fear? So I did mention the outside before. Creatures from the outside, the outsiders, are very much something that are to be feared. The Fae are a mysterious group of people who sort of are, well, not people, but they're creatures that are sort of given like mythological weight to them. They are usually the tricksters or something that are dealing in the background, but people think they're gone now, though there are rumors they're not. We don't know much about the Fae, other than that they're like there's a blog post preview that's like stories where the Fae might have influenced things, I think. And there's one of the dead families that has been previewed. Someone made a deal with a Fae and it turned them into a phantasm, but did something and we don't know what it is. So they're kind of a mystery and we don't know anything about it. Same with the outsiders. We don't really know much about them. They're powerful entities in the outside, but as far as being told what they are, really, we don't know much about them. You can also make your own. Feel free to do stuff like that. There is, I think, in one of the previews for the Venerators, they did talk about there possibly being like global conspiracy, like Venator chapters or something, like or like groups. But that was also just rumors and mystery and things of that nature. With all those different concepts we have seen so far, how are they organized? Is there a system like a splat book for Chronicles of Darkness and World of Darkness? That is a good question. Each of the lineages are split into about 6 or 7, I think, families, and they mention that they might be adding more families depending on if they can come up with good ones that they want to add for like future books and things. But as far as like organized, that's pretty much it. I think it's like, so you have the 5 lineages, and then you have like 6 or 7 subtypes to each of those in the form of families. They did say they might be putting out supplements in the future that focus on the individual lineages, such as like the Hungry or the Primal. But as far as like stuff that we've seen and concrete proof is coming out, it's just the core rulebook for the moment. Is is there a well-defined setting? Let me drink some water for a second. The setting is the real world, so that's pretty well defined in my opinion, but there are elements of the setting that are like the supernatural parts of the setting that are pretty well defined. The families are well defined, the lineages are defined to an extent. They do leave a lot up to story guide interpretation from what I've seen. Other than that, it's just as well defined as, say, something like Chronicles of Darkness, Vampire the Requiem, Werewolf the Forsaken. There aren't hard answers to things. One of the things I think was mentioned is there's sort of like this oral tradition with the families, and not all the families know exactly who their progenitor was. It's sort of like it's sort of like a legend that has been passed from generation to generation. So you might have, say, someone who says, well, our family is the progenitor is this werewolf from like the Victorian era, but other people were like, no, that's not true. We are actually created by the moon or something like that. But it's not like Werewolf the Forsaken, where Mother Luna is a real creature that you can interact with if you it through her spirit guide people, the loons. Like, you're not going to find that type of well-defined nature, but you're dealing more at this point with like the low-level stuff, and maybe in the future they'll expand on it. They've talked about expanding on stuff because right now the entanglement level, which is sort of your power stat, goes from 1 to 10, but the core book only goes up 1 to 4. So I assume once you get into the higher levels, you're going to be probably hitting some of those bigger questions, maybe. What is the situation of mortal hunters in Curseborn? There are people called the Venators, which are your hunter type people. They are mortals who have figured out that Accursed exist. They just know them as supernatural monsters. Excuse me again. They are not characters, as far as I know. Like, they're not player characters, but they are going to be NPCs from what we've seen. We already had previewed the the Red Riding Hoods, which are a cool enemy concept. But as far as like, if you want to play a mortal hunter yourself, you could probably play it without applying a family or lineage path on your character, I assume. Basically, you could probably take the Trinity Continuum or the Storypath Ultra core rules and make a character that way, and then you have a normal human character. So you won't have to worry about perhaps not being able to play those characters if you want to play those characters in the world. What differentiates it from World of Darkness and Chronicles of Darkness? A big thing I would say for Curseborn is that it's a lot more into the modern horror genre. Um, let's say you are a person who really enjoys horror movies. Would you rather, if you want to be scared, watch the original Frankenstein or Nightmare on Elm Street or Saw or let's say a more recent one of the Michael Flanagan shows, Black Mass or House of Usher? You probably want to watch stuff that's not the original Frankenstein, but maybe you can appreciate Frankenstein. So that's why I'm saying, like, this game is about the modern day horror a lot. It focuses on those more modern day stories, though there are elements of like inspiration and homage to older works of horror. I think for myself in general, what I like about it, other than what I like about Curseborn more than like World of Darkness or Chronicles of Darkness, in World of Darkness, you have for your vampires, they are all descendants of Cain. They are all descendants of this first vampire who was cursed for killing his brother. Um, that is canon. In Curseborn, there is no canon about who created the the various lineages. It's sort of like oral tradition. You don't know. There are magical things in the world. There are supernatural things in the world, but it's really up to the GM what is true and what is not. There are no game-breaking abilities that let you look back in time and see what created your character's entire existence or things of that nature. So I really like that aspect of Curseborn. As far as like Chronicles of Darkness goes, I don't know. It's Chronicles of Darkness has so many different things going on. I just like the fact that Curseborn is doing new things, and it's doing stuff that Chronicles of Darkness and World of Darkness wouldn't do normally. Like, their werewolves in Curseborn don't have to deal with the spirit world all the time, and they are not linked to Mother Gaia or Mother Luna or whatever. They are werewolves because they turn into wolves. That's their whole shtick. What is the flexibility of the setting for focusing on just one Curseborn, I'm assuming family or lineage, over a mixture? From what we've seen so far of the Dead manuscript, there are 3 practices that Dead characters get. Each of them have about 5 spells that we've seen. I'm not sure if those are the only spells they'll get access to. Probably not. But in any case, so that's like, if you're playing with 4 people, and if the ash can is right and people only get like 3 spells initially, I feel like if you're playing with 5 people, you're going to hit the cap of all those magic spells. But you're going to have a variety of things like your inheritances from your families and your motifs for each of the families. And I think there were like 3 or 4 motifs per family, so you can probably get a lot of like differentiation between your characters in that way. I'm not sure if there are other things later on that allow you to get spells from different locations in the book, but I do feel as though if you want to play like a single lineage, you're probably going to be fine. If you're going to be playing a family, a single family type like all hides, you might be limiting yourself a lot more. Excuse me. How does the setting work for a mixture with Curseborn? So I'm assuming a mixture of the different families and lineages. That's where I think the bread and butter is with the game. You're gonna have people who are like closer with their friends than they are with their families. So having friends across the different lineage types is good to have. Other than that, like, yeah, you're going to have different skills and things of that nature that your character has taken, and you're going to have different attributes spread out, and then you're going to have like all the like a wide variety of things that you can do. How does the magic system work? This person has run Scion, which was kind of weak there. From what we saw with the abilities in the Ash Can, and I can only really speak to that, each of the characters had a practice that's associated with them, and the practice gave them a spell that they had access to cast. They were pretty much, you could either bleed a curse die or hold a curse die. Holding onto curse die means like you have it as part of a resource pool that you can use. If you're using an ability such as like turning invisible, I forget what the ability was called, as long as you have 2 curse die on your character, you can be invisible. But as soon as you spend curse die, you can no longer use it. So if you go from having 2 curse die down to 1 curse die, you can't use that ability until you gain more curse die. There are some abilities that do bleed curse die or remove them from your dice pool. I remember one from the werewolf character in the game. Basically, you bleed a curse die, and now your attacks for the scene have an elemental component to them. So I think most of the spells are probably going to like fall into that line of thinking. I don't think it's going to be like old World of Darkness or Chronicles of Darkness abilities where it spells out, oh yes, you make this roll, and if you succeed on the roll, something happens. I think every time you use one of your abilities, something's going to happen. I don't think there's a lot of roll and it fails stuff going on. Like the Psychic Shriek ability that my character did was an attack, and that did, if I did fail the roll, I wouldn't hit people, but I don't think there are going to be a lot of those types of abilities. Who knows? Um, I think a lot of stuff, though, is going to be sort of like you bleed a curse die and it just happens. Or you have a bunch of curse die and it just happens. How do paths work? That's a good question. Paths are your core aspect to your character. You have 3 paths, which sort of define who your character is. These are things like your lineage and your family type, and then you have your role path. Your role path is essentially like what your role in, like what your job is or what you kind of do in your day-to-day life. Whereas your lineage path is either primal, dead, hungry, outcast, or sorcerer, and then your family path is one of these subfamilies for each of those lineages. When you pick a path at character creation, you get to choose a major or minor path. One of your paths can be major, and then the other 2 have to be minor. I believe if you choose, for instance, in the examples we have in so far, if you choose your major path to be a lineage or a family, you're going to get something called an inheritance, which is a special ability for that path. I'm not sure if the role paths do. I think they might just be minor, but I'm not sure about that. The examples we've had in the Ashcan all had their role path as minor. But what a minor path means is you get access to a lesser amount of attribute points, and I think you also get access to skills that you can take. Whereas for your major path, you're really getting more attribute dots for your character at character creation. In particular arenas, you have physical, social, and mental. So you get to allocate those a lot more for your major one than you do for, say, your minor one, which has, I think, maybe like 1 or 2 dots less than your major path version. And then you can choose your skills based on which paths you've taken. So if you're like a doctor path or something, you might get medicine or something as a skill. I'm not even sure if there's a medicine skill, but like just as a like example to use. Paths also give you access to contacts, and your contacts are essentially people who you know who can help you based on your path. So if you're a doctor, maybe it's a nurse that you know or another fellow doctor. Or if it's your primal lineage, maybe it's a friend of yours from the 8 Hands or the Spawn of Vodnik or another primal family. And if it's your family itself, it might be your mentor with the Get of Leica. Like you're really close to your mother figure in the Get of Leica, and she's your contact. There can be any number of things. They are it's a very key thing for me for you to have like the paths, because it sets up a lot of background characters that you as a GM can use to help flesh out the world with your players. And so it feels like your players are actually a part of the world as opposed to say like just someone standing off to the side and reacting to the world. Like I feel like in Dungeons and Dragons with backgrounds and stuff like that, it's like, oh, you did this and this and this, but you're in another part of the country and no one knows you did this, or and stuff like that. That might just be me, though. I feel like I played a folklore character in D&D at one point, and it's like, oh yeah, people know me as the guy who killed this person. And in the game, the GM was just like, yeah, no one knows that you did this because you did that in your home country, and you're in a different country altogether. Whereas in this, it's like, oh yeah, I know my mom. I can pick up a cell phone and call her and get information out of her. I think I had one more question that was on YouTube. I'm just going to bring it up here on my phone to answer it. Apologies that this might be taking a little bit of time for me looking it up, but I did have this question that I wanted to answer. Will there be the setting of Curseborn tie-in? Will the setting of Curseborn tie into the future Storypath Ultra games? That question is a really good one. Honestly, the Storypath Ultra games all use the same core system. They do have some stuff that differentiates them in how they utilize the system. So I can imagine that you can bring an At the Gates character into a Curseborn game. But that being said, Curseborn is its own game line separate from At the Gates. At the Gates is part of the Earthbane cycle, whereas Curseborn is its own thing. I am kind of hoping that if the Fae are their own thing, we might get a book that's just about the Fae and like playing Fae characters, but no one said anything about that. That's just my speculation. Mechanically, how does the Curseborn rule set use SPU and tailor it to specific tones or gameplay in ways that differentiate it? I can't speak to this myself. I do know there was a blog post recently where they mentioned, and maybe it was in a Pathcast episode as well, that the intrigue or investigation system got expanded on from the core Storypath Ultra rule set. For me, in particular, the way that damnations work can lead more into the horror aspect. And there was a character, a enemy type that could like do one punch and knock you out. And that was said by the developers to be the case because they wanted the game to feel more dangerous as opposed to being this sort of light and fluffy world where you don't have to worry about anything because you're a hero. You are playing sort of urban fantasy, urban horror type characters who can be heroes or heroic in their own way, but they're not necessarily the same type of hero as in At the Gates. I think that answers all the questions that people have posed to me. Thank you all for asking them. If you liked this game now, if I sold you on it, please check out the link down below in the comments and in the description and check it out. Back it at the $5 level if you're still a little hesitant. If you really think that you like this game, highly suggest going for the higher tier. I myself went for the $60 or $50 level, I think, for the hardcover book, which also gives me access to the PDF copy when it comes out. I am a person who doesn't usually get physical copies of books. However, I feel like because I followed this game for so long, I really want to like support it as much as I can. The people at Onyx Path are really great. They're constantly talking to people in the Discord group, which I'll put a link down below for the Onyx Path official Discord. And they are really helpful. And if you really want to like give feedback about the game, there's even a feedback Google form that you can fill out about your concerns for the game. Anything that you have, any gripe you have, just put it in there. Some of them might be something that they can't deal with, but I do know that they'll have some suggestions for things. For instance, a lot of people really want the spellcasting from Mage the Awakening or Mage the Ascension, and they've suggested using the spellcasting system from the World Below, which is a great alternative to adding in the Mage the Awakening type system, because honestly, as someone who doesn't like that system, I don't really want a core rule putting that into the game and codifying it. Maybe they'll throw it into the higher entanglement levels of the game, but I really appreciate them giving that homebrew suggestion as opposed to saying, okay, well, we'll officially say that you can do this or something. Um, I like having the flexibility to run my games how I want and not have to worry about a system that might break the game for my own personal campaign. Sorry for the little rant there at the end. Thank you so much for watching. If you want a website, my wife has currently started a web design business. There'll be a link down below where you can get a free consultation if you want to check it out. She does stuff a lot for artists and people who have businesses, so please check them out. And also, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a good one.